Hello, and welcome to my tutorial series on how to make a 2D platformer in Unity. In this video, we're going to add a double jump to our character so that when he jumps, he can then jump again, or if you like, you can increase it to however many jumps you want. In this case, he can jump 4 before he gives out. Let's begin. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our player controller script, and underneath our jump variables here, we're going to add 2 more variables. We'll just copy and paste this, Control V, and it's going to be a private int, not a private float, because it just has to be a whole number. So it's going to be private int, and it's going to be called extra jumps. And this is the amount of extra jumps we're going to have for our double jump or triple jump, or how many jumps you want. And the next one is going to be a private int, and this one is just going to be called extra jumps value. And down here in our fixed update, we have our if on ground right here with our apply drag. We're going to be setting the value of our jumps. So we're going to say our extra jumps value is going to equal extra jumps. And then we're going to go down to our jump function down here. And inside this, we're going to say that, actually we'll put it before all this, we'll say if we are not on ground, and remember the exclamation point means not, so if it just says on ground or on the ground, but exclamation point on ground means, actually that would have been an error right there. Excuse me, an exclamation point would be not on ground. And if we're not on the ground, what's going to happen is that extra jumps value is going to be decremented. And what that means is that when we're in the air, it's going to subtract from the amount of jumps we have. So if we leave the ground and we have 2 jumps, we're not on the ground, and then it's going to subtract 1. So then we're in the air and we only have 1 jump left, and that's going to give us our double jump or triple jump or whatever amount of jumps you want. So now scroll back up to the top, and we're going to implement this. And here we have our private bool can jump, and that it's equal to input.keycode what we're using to jump, and we have to be on the ground. But now we're going to add our double jump to that, and it's going to be and on ground, or, and that's what these 2 bars mean, that's or, extra jumps value, and we want that greater than 0, and close it out with a parentheses. Okay, just a couple quick things to clean up here. Instead of get key, we're going to put get key down, and going down here, this if can jump with our jump function, this should really be in our update rather than our void update or our fixed update. And that's because of how physics is used in our code here. When you're using physics, you kind of want fixed update, and when you're not using physics and you're just using forces, then you want to use update. So, and also we have apply linear drag twice here. We only need it once, and I think that should be good. So going back into Unity, I'm going to let everything compile. We can go back into Unity, and right here, here's our extra jumps. So we'll add one extra jump. Actually, let's just start with 0. We'll just go through them just to show you. So here's 0 extra jumps. We just have our initial jump. It works like normal, if that's what you want. Then we can add 1, and then we should be able to run and get a second jump in the air like that. And we can go ahead, let's add 5. However many jumps you want for your game, you can just keep adding them. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to clean up something that I mentioned last video, I believe. It's that down here, when we go down to our check collision function, we have our transformed opposition times a ground raycast length. And I think we repeat this down here. We don't have it next to the transformed opposition down here. But anyway, this first ground raycast length should be some sort of offset. So let's fix that. Let's go up here to our header right here, ground collision variables. Let's just copy this, Control C, Control V to paste. And we're going to change this first off to a private vector 3, and we're going to call this vector 3 ground raycast offset. And so this will create 2 lines. Actually, I should go back and better explain what I'm talking about. Right now we have this one line right here. And what we want to do, like with the other script, is that it's better to have 2 lines so that you can have 2 raycasts just in case he's jumping on an edge here. And I don't really think we need a middle one. I think it would be kind of unnecessary at this point. So going back to our script, I'm going to go down back to our check collision, and I'm going to go ahead and just say add ground raycast offset. And then to make 2 of them, I'm going to say, or I'm going to take all this, I'm going to copy it, get everything lined up, Control V, and now the second one is not going to be plus ground raycast offset. It's going to be minus ground raycast offset. So one will go to the right, the positive one, and the negative one will go to the left. And down here, we're going to need to fix this also. We're going to add a plus ground raycast offset here. And we also need to add one to this one here. Right there. And we're just going to also cut and paste this and just make this one minus. Paste it right there. And right here, we're going to put minus. And here, we're going to put minus also. Going to hit save. I'm going to go back into Unity. Make sure there's no errors. There aren't. So now we have our one line here. Let's go up to our player, and here's our ground raycast offset. Actually I don't need to hit play. I'll just go over here and mouse over the X, and as you can see, when I move it, it'll separate the 2 of them. Let's just keep that at -0.5. And then it works either way. I can write this as 0.5, and which is probably better. It makes a little more sense. And it'll still separate them the same distance away. I think they're kind of touching the ends there. I don't think that's going to... Yeah, that's perfect right there. So now I have 2 just in case I bounce towards an edge. I can still jump off of it. Let's hit play. And now we have 2 raycast, and we have our double jump. So since this was such a short video, let's go into our code for a second and sort of review everything we did. We've done a lot here between the 2 scripts. So we'll start off here in our header, our horizontal movement header right here, and we'll look at these 2 variables, or we're going to show how we use these 2 variables, our move speed and our max speed that we created up here. And basically what we did is, going down a little bit, we created this, or we defined our horizontal direction as getting input in the X direction, which is pretty self-explanatory, but we used it in this move character function right here. Actually, we kind of defined our get input here also, where we just defined or created a vector 2 with x and y coordinates. But that was all implemented in this move character function. So here's our horizontal direction. It's just simply our movement in the x direction, and the 0f here, the float, is our movement in the y direction. When we're adding our force, we just want to move from side to side. We don't want an up and down movement. And we multiplied it by our move speed. And our move speed is basically an acceleration. However, if we don't cap it, if we don't create a limit for it, our character will just accelerate into infinity and get faster and faster and faster and faster. So that is why we created this max speed right here. And if we go back into Unity, we can hit play. And we can play with these numbers to create better precision with our character to whatever desire you want your game to be. But I can make the move speed, but actually let's even go, let's make it 100. And so I can create this huge amount of acceleration, but it's going to be capped at 10. And he'll only move faster than 10 if I increase it. If I make it 20, his overall speed will increase also. So with that in mind, we also created, let's go back actually, our linear drag. And we used that in a function down here, and we basically created drag based on how much we were slowing. And going back into our script, if we don't, let me lower this, or it will probably slide right off of the platform here. If we don't have drag, if I make drag 0, our character will slide just like that. So we want to create a little bit of drag. This was on 4. You might want to play with this number because even with 4, he slides around. We could probably make this 10. Let's make this 15. And now we can see we can speed up, but when I take my finger off the key, he stops a lot more suddenly, and we have a lot better control of our character. So moving on, I'm going to scroll up and we'll talk about our jump variables here. And we're going to go down here to our jump function, and we'll also talk about our collision variables also in the same conversation, because that's how our jump works. We have to be able to know whether we're touching the ground. So we use that with our check collisions right here. We are using raycast, and this was talked about a few videos ago, where we use the raycast to be able to tell whether we're hitting the ground or not. And when we are hitting the ground, we have designated that as this bool right here on ground. And that when we are on the ground, we apply our linear drag. And then also, if we are on ground, we can jump. And also, we applied some air linear drag also. And lastly, one of the things we did to add more precision was to add these fall multipliers. And the purpose of these, when we go down here, is our fall multipliers are so when we jump, our character, let me just take the extra jumps away for a second. Our character doesn't have a lot of floatiness to his jump. In all actuality, when you look at it, he sort of arcs up, but then he kind of falls down a little faster. And that is mostly how a lot of platformers are done these days. They float up, but they fall down a lot faster. If you don't do it, and you've probably played games like this before, where if you have too much of an arc, you're just kind of floating in the air and it doesn't feel right. The controls just don't feel right when that happens. And as I said before, go ahead and just play with these numbers. That's why we made them public variables. So you can go around and make these adjustments right here without changing code. So play around with the variables and find out what kind of controller or the comfortable feel for the controller you want for your game. So that's it for today. As always, thank you for watching. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and support me on Patreon. And a big special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. All links are in the description below. See you next time.